Welcome to another edition of the Daily Night. I am your host, Brian Smith, and this edition is going to feature offensive line recruiting. The reason that I bring it up as I was going through looking at the spring game situation for this upcoming Saturday, looking at the roster, the depth chart, etc. A lot of junior, senior, fifth-year senior, and even in Sam Jackson's case, a sixth-year senior. You have a lot of veterans that are going to be leaving the roster this year or next. That being stated, UCF did not recruit a lot of high school players, very specific here, high school players in the last class, and very few offensive linemen. That aside, I'll go to that in a moment. UCF has one primary goal, in my opinion, just me here. They need at least two tackles in this class, preferably from the high school ranks, if they can. The one caveat to that is you must also ascend to a certain level of talent, or it's for naught. Ethan Mort is a kid that they signed out of Venice. He redshirted last year. I think at some point he will be a contributor, guard or tackle. He's a good football player, plays at a great program at Venice. They actually won state title the year after he left high school. So that's a kid I think they can do something with. He's a 2021 recruit, but 2022, no pure tackle was signed. Tackles are hard to find. It is a premier position. Its value is more than the star rating that you will see on Rivals or ESPN or whatever one you want to use. Most importantly for UCF, though, they need guys that can make an impact, technically speaking, which is really, really hard. There are only a few of those guys in the country, and they're probably just not going to get them. So what you also need to look at is floor and ceiling, the combination. Certain guys have a really low floor because they could just be a total bust, but because of their athleticism, they also have a high ceiling. They could be really good. Herb Hand's a great football coach at UCF. He's done a good job with what he's had when he came in last year and now having another spring. I think it'll help. In the fall, they might get a kid a little later in the process, which traditionally offensive linemen commit early. They could flip a kid. They could find a late bloomer, which is not uncommon with offensive linemen, add somebody later. But I'd like to see them go into fall camp / the season in September with at least one guy. At least one high school offensive tackle committed for the class of 2023. That way you're not putting all your eggs in one basket and or trying to jump into the portal again. They got lucky and got two really good ones this year. Swoboda, they did a great job. How often are you going to be able to count on that year after year? It's a good thing to do, but it's also very difficult to also recruit high school kids when you're taking all these guys ahead of you and experience it. They're worried about playing. So it's a dicey game. It's a bit of a gray area. The other thing that I want to talk about with recruiting here, numbers in general. What do you need, regardless of UCF or anybody else? Offensive line. What do you need on your roster? Center, guard, and tackle. How many? Minimum, you really want to be at 13, like that's bottom end. 14 to 16 is more desirable. Injuries, attrition, portal, funeral, a kid has to leave, whatever. In a moment, you can lose a key player. And you got to remember, if you only have 13, you're going to have 2 or 3 guys banged up. You're going to have at least 2 that just aren't ready to play. And then it just comes down to a numbers game. You may have 8 guys that are available. How many of them can really play left tackle? 1, maybe 2. And the second one's probably not ready. That's why tackle recruiting, as I mentioned, is very important. That's your blind side of your quarterback. Both Keene and JRP are right-handed. Thomas Castellanos is right-handed, so the left tackle is very important. And you need some numbers. So UCF didn't sign a bunch of guys over the last couple of classes, offensive line, and I think this is a very important class for them to do so. They need to not only get some guys that are talented with that ceiling, they need at least one guy, I guess, whether it's guard or tackle, that's a dude. And we'll find out this summer if they can do that. Roger Kearney and several other guys are recruiting. It's going to be hard to get them because they have the Georgia offers, the Alabamas, and that kind of stuff. But you have to go after them. A kid that I do want to mention, and he was on campus recently when media was there, DJ Chester, plays at Eagles Landing Christian, just a little bit southeast of Atlanta. Tremendous football program. He was on campus. I took a look at him, and about 2 seconds later, I said, yep, that's one that looks like the part. 290, 295, something like that, 6'4", 6'5". I just looking at the eye test, that's not a problem. He's a good-looking kid. and he has the offers to back it up. So Florida State and Auburn and Miami and LSU and Southern Cal, a bunch of offers. Getting that kid on campus is important. So that could be one of your guys. It could be a swing guy. He's got the frame. He can play guard or tackle. Maybe he ends up with one or the other, and that's it. But maybe he plays both. Some guys like Sam Jackson end up going back and forth based on your needs, and they're versatile. So Chester, I think, could be one of those guys. The other really important note here, we're kind of spoiled right now. Matt Lee is the center for the Knights, and he's probably going to get paid to play football. This will probably be his last season in Orlando. They signed a kid last year that I think is going to be a good football player, and I think he's going to be good enough to make the transition to possibly start in his second year on campus. It's still difficult to project. Kaden Kittler, he's out of Dallas. I've talked to him, interviewed him, been around him, great kid, but we don't know. With that, John Harris, who started his career at Virginia Tech, ended up at Mercer. Now he's a preferred walk-on at UCF. He'll probably earn a scholarship, is coming to school here at UCF. That could be a guy to kind of count as a recruit in a sense, because it's just such a critical need. If the ball doesn't get to the quarterback, it doesn't work out well. Teams that struggle at center struggle with win-loss records. That doesn't change. It doesn't matter if it's a snapper. It doesn't matter if it's a shotgun. It doesn't matter if it's a situation on field goals, whatever. The ball must get to where it needs to go just to start the play. I think he could play there. I think he could play guard. And I also just think having another experienced body with the lower numbers that they had is very valuable to mention. Last thing for this short podcast that I want to mention is the following. If UCF can forget specific positions here, 4 offensive linemen from the high school class in this group, I think it would be great. But the internal situation with UCF and any other college is much different. These kids, before they transfer, the notion is they put their name in the transfer portal, then they start looking. That's garbage. That's garbage. Coaches at every school are getting phone calls from kids they used to recruit. I guarantee it. UCF's going to have a better idea. Okay, so-and-so's not in the portal yet. That doesn't mean he's not about to be. We're going to skip on this high school kid, or we're definitely going to take, you know what I mean? It depends on what they're hearing and what phone calls they receive. If somebody's dad calls and says, hey, just so you know, tomorrow my kid's putting his name in the portal, they got a heads up. They can start doing their due diligence with finding out the transcript situation. What can they transfer? Do they need him? Does he want to play the position they want? Yada, yada, yada. There are a lot of things involved there. What eligibility questions, you got to knock those out first. Academics, have they been in trouble, etc. But I think that UCF will probably still get at least one offensive lineman in the class for the 23 season, not 22, that they'll probably take as well at the end of this year or somewhere in the middle, because they've gotten such good players. I didn't think that was going to be consistent. I was wrong. They got not one but 2 guys, Grable and Swoboda, and they're both probably going to end up in the starting lineup is my guess. And look, that matters. If you can get tackles like that, that's great. Again, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, that's not something that's consistent. But if you can get one guy like that and you get 4 high school kids, or at least 3 to 2, you could balance back out the roster depending on what year the transfers are. So offensive line recruiting in the class of 23/portal is very, very important for the Knights. Just don't know exactly how they're going to do it. I'm just feeling this out like everybody else with regards to the portal. It changes recruiting completely. I used to be able to just tell you this is what you need, and that was it. And if you got a transfer, it was kind of a bonus situation because they had to sit out. Now the kids don't sit. It's totally different. So UCF offensive line recruiting is at a tenuous point here. They need some really talented players. I'd like to see them go high school, but we're not sure how that's really going to go. So anyway, everybody be safe. Have a great evening. Take care.